We're in Joshua chapter 3. Joshua 3. Okay, I gave you a challenge last time. How many of you took it?
We took it, but we didn't find out.
5 years.
Challenge was figure out how many years it took them to conquer the land once they crossed. And it's kind of it is a pretty good challenge because you got to put some things together. You don't have any verse that tells you. Anybody? We got 5 years. Anybody say anything different?
I say 3.5.
You say what?
3.5.
3.5. We got 5, 3.5, and 6. Anything else? Well, let me tell you where to go, and let's figure this out. Somebody turn to Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 14. Get your pencil out, and you have to write this down. 2:14. Read it to me.
38 years passed from the time we first left Kadesh Barnea until we finally crossed the Zered Brook. By then, all they being old enough to fight in the battle had died in the wilderness.
Okay.
That's all.
That's good. That's good. So, from the time that they sent the spies in Kadesh Barnea until they crossed the Zered, which means that that's where they camped, where Deuteronomy began. How many years have passed? 38 years have passed. So they wandered for 40 years, right? So you can go back and figure out from the time that they left Egypt until they sent the spies in. They stayed at the mountain how long? 1 year, 1 month, 20 days, right? So you figure all that in, then you get 38 years from the time they sent the spies in, and it all adds up to 40 years, all right? But he said 38 years have passed since we sent the spies in. So that's your first peg that you drive down. Now go to Joshua chapter 14, beginning in verse 6. Then the children of Judah came to Joshua and Gilgal, and Caleb the son of, and by the way, we're in the process of conquering the land here, all right? And Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said unto him, You know the thing the Lord said unto Moses, a man of God, concerning me and you in Kadesh Barnea. So this is Joshua talking to Caleb. And who are Joshua and Caleb? They were the 2 spies that came back with a report that they could take the land, right? So now the land has been essentially conquered, and now Joshua is looking for his piece of land that was promised to him. 40 years old was I when Moses, servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. Right? So we went back, he said that was, how many years ago was that? 38 years ago, right? And he was 40 years old at that time, right? We just read.
Caleb, you talking about?
Caleb, Joshua
and Caleb, yeah. Caleb, Joshua came to Caleb. No, Caleb, I'm sorry, this was Caleb the question, right?
Caleb.
Yeah. And so he said, I was 40 years old when they sent me in, when Moses sent me in to spy out the land. How many years have passed since then? 38 years, right? So he's how old now? 78 years old. Then he's going to go down here, and he's going to say, that was when he came into the land. Verse 10, he says, Now behold, the Lord kept me alive these 45 years since the Lord spoke this word unto Moses. Children of Israel wandered in the wilderness, and now I am 85 years old. So he's 85 years old now, the land being conquered. He was how old whenever they entered the land? he was 40 plus, how many? 38. He was 78 years old when he came into the land, right? So he was 78. Let me go back and get my figure here. And now he's 85. So if he's 85 now, and he was 78 when he entered the land, how many years
7.
have passed? 7 years. 7 years. Now,
I was close.
whenever I read through that, and I read about the conquering of the land, up until I sat down and tried to figure out how long it took, I thought, you know, maybe a year, conquering the land, maybe a couple of years, 7 years to get that land conquered.
How many tribes were over there they had to conquer?
Pardon?
How many tribes were over there that they had to beat?
7.
7?
7 tribes.
It took them a year for each tribe.
Yeah. You know, essentially, I'm not saying it was equally divided, but yeah, it would work out that way. But you stop and think now, I don't know what this does to you, but God promised them this land. But he didn't just hand it to them on a platter.
Fight for it.
They had to fight for it, and they had to fight for it a long time. 7 years is a long time. And now, you know, he's gonna say the land's been conquered, and I want this peace that Moses promised to me. He promised me I was gonna get this peace, and I'm as strong now as I was then, and so, I want permission to go in and take my piece of land. And that's what that's about.
The tribes have stayed on the other side of the Jordan 7 years without a place to live.
Yeah, that's right. Their families without them for that 7.5 years. And so, you know, it's not like this is the most important thing in the world, but it becomes real. And there's a lesson to be learned. God promises us certain things, and we start praying that we get this, and you know, this is gonna happen. We pray to God that this is gonna happen. And God does it in his own time. He's not on our timetable, we're on his timetable. And so, to me, the fact that it took them that long is pretty impressive. And you would think, and he told them, he said, I'm not gonna drive all the inhabitants out at one time. I'm gonna send hornets ahead of you, he's gonna say. Drive them out piecemeal, a little bit at a time. Because if I drive everybody out at the same time, what's gonna happen? Yeah, wild beasts are gonna come in and take over. And so and you know, if a house has been sitting empty for 7 years and the vines haven't been taken care of, the crops, and you know, there's not gonna be any crops. But I'm just gonna push them out gradually so that, you know, you'll walk in and everything's all set up for you. There's no dust in the house, all right? You can just walk right in. So anyway, that's just a little piece of something that's interesting to me, that it took that long to conquer the land after they crossed it, even though God had promised it to them, and he was fulfilling that promise. Sometimes God answers our prayer, but he doesn't answer it just like we think he ought to. You know, we think he ought to just, bam, and here it is. You know, and we pray for that, and we get discouraged sometimes when it doesn't happen. Is God listening to us? So, any comment about that?
I got a question.
Okay.
Are the Palestinians, they're Jewish people,
They have, if you're a descendant of Abraham as a Jew, then they're descendants of Abraham. They're not the Jewish nation, but they have the blood from Abraham.
Are they descendants of Ishmael?
Well, not necessarily the Palestinians, what's the religion? The what? Muslims. The Muslims are.
that's what the Palestinians today, that are in the war, they're
They're-
Muslim.
They are, yes. They are.
Cause it was on the news the other day, said they was fighting their own family.
Yeah, Well, everybody over there's cousins.
Kinda like Civil War.
They are. They are, part of it. Yeah. And it's not new, is it? It's over a little piece of ground.
It's not gonna be worth anything when they get finished.
Well, we'll send $100 billion over. Anyway, I'm sorry, here we go, we're in chapter 3. We're ready to cross Jordan. All right? There's a river somewhere, it's called Jordan. By the way, were you at that funeral?
I didn't go to the funeral, I went to the.
I would nearly bet that they sang that song, because that song is probably the favorite of that church there. They
What's the
had-
name of it?
They had a group, there's.
This song?
Yeah, what's the name of that song?
Crossing over.
Crossing Jordan. First time I ever heard it was from, they had a group, that sang that song at weddings, and people all over the country requested that group to come and sing that song at funerals. I said weddings, I meant funerals. They're not the same. Sometimes they are.
Still a lot of crying.
I'm gonna have to separate you two. Joshua rose early in the morning, when they came from Chittim and came to the Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over, and they're gonna stay there 3 days. And during that 3 days, tells them to get ready because they're about to cross over, and he gives some instructions. And the instructions about their relationship to the Ark of the Covenant and what's about to happen. Now, what is about to happen? What's gonna be the next major event that's gonna happen? They're gonna cross the Jordan on dry land, right? Like their ancestors crossed the Red Sea. And so he says, and this is some preaching material in here, by the way. He says, the Ark of the Covenant is going to, the Levites are gonna bear it, and you will follow it. In verse 4, he says, there will be a space between you and it about 2,000 cubits. Figure out how far that is. If assuming a cubit is 1.5 yards, is approximately 3,600 feet, which is over a half mile. And so they are to stay that far behind the Ark of the Covenant. But the Ark of the Covenant is gonna blaze the trail for them. And what's in the Ark of the Covenant?
10 Commandments.
10 Commandments, Aaron's rod, and the mountain, right? And God's presence manifests itself over that Ark of the Covenant, right? Whenever the tabernacle is set up and the Ark is in there, then you have the pillar of fire, pillar of cloud, right, that follow. So they're still going that way, and there's a line in verse 4 that makes a really good sermon. It says, do not stay that far away from it, do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you must go, for you have not passed this way before. We're blazing new territory. We're going where none of you have ever been before. Now, can you make a devotional out of that? What were they to do because they have never been this way before? They're to keep their eyes on the Ark of the Covenant. They're to keep their eyes on what represents God. And wherever it goes, what? Where you go. That's where you go. Because if it wasn't there, you wouldn't know where to go or what to do. You'd be left to your own devices. And you'd be scattered out and you'd be in a mess and no time flat. But if we all keep our eyes on the Lord and what He tells us, that's the source of our unity, right? We know where to go. We know what to do. We know what to say. Because we're all traveling in a place we've never gone before. We only get to go through this life one time, and none of us have ever been that way, this way. And we're headed toward Canaan, right? We're headed toward a promised land. And if we're gonna get there, we're gonna have to follow the Ark of the Covenant. That's it. All right? We have to follow God. We have to listen to what he says, do what he tells us, go where he tells us to go. And don't do what he tells us not to do. So, that, for you have not passed this way before. Make a pretty good sermon title. And Joshua said to the people, sanctify yourself, set yourself apart, cleanse yourself. For tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. He said, get ready for what's going to happen tomorrow. And he's going to tell them. Joshua spoke unto the priests, saying, take up the Ark of the Covenant, pass over before the people. They took up the Ark of the Covenant and went before the people. And now the Lord's going to tell them what's about to happen. The Lord said unto Joshua, this day will I begin to magnify you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Now hold your finger right there and turn over to chapter 4, verse 14. On that day, the Lord magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they feared Moses all the days of his life. So whatever transpired between verse 7 and verse 14 of chapter 4 accomplished what God said it was going to accomplish. So, if I were you, now mine happens to, and I don't mind writing in my Bible, I drew a line from verse 7 in chapter 3 over to 14 chapter 4. Because here's what he says is going to happen. This is what happened. All right, you can cross-reference it beside it. And you shall, back to verse 8, you shall command the priests that bear the Ark of the Covenant, say, when you come to the edge of the water of Jordan, stand still in the Jordan. And Joshua said to the children of Israel, come here, and hear the words of the Lord. Joshua said, hereby you will know that the living God is among you, that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Gergesites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites, and any other ites that are in there. Behold, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth passes over before you into Jordan. Now, by the way, as you stop and try to get this picture in your mind, he's told them, you stay behind the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is going to blaze the trail for you, and you follow it wherever it goes. But as they cross the Jordan, the Ark of the Covenant is going to be standing, it's going to be on the shoulders of the priest in the middle of the river. And they're going to pass by it. And so, once they have passed over, then it will take its place in the lead of it. But for the time being, this thing about staying half a mile, a little more than half a mile away from it, it's going to be after they get into the land. But right now, the priests are going to bear it on their shoulders. They're going to stand in the middle of the river on dry land, because the Lord's going to drive the river. And they're going to hold that ark until all the people pass over.
That's a long time.
That's what I was thinking. But hey, these guys in pretty good shape. You know, I mean, they've been walking for 40 years.
How many, you reckon, colors are gold?
I don't know that. Well, yeah, I do. I think, didn't he say how many?
40,000 armed for war.
Pardon? No, how many were holding it? For some reason, I want to say 12. 12.
Well,
I think there were 12.
Long rock.
Yeah.
Six of each side.
So, you know, still, you know, maybe they set this thing in rotation where three of them can kind of relax while another three on that side held it up and swap. I don't know, but I would think they were going to be standing.
As long as they don't touch it.
What if you're those priests that are going on half a mile ahead of the rest of them into a place you don't know what's going on? They
Well,
won't see you coming.
They're just following what the Lord tells them to go.
I know.
Yeah. So, let's see, verse 11, behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth passes over before you into Jordan. Now therefore take 12 men out of the tribes of Israel, every tribe of man. It shall come to pass as soon as the soles of their feet for the priests to bear the ark of the Lord rest in the waters of the Jordan. The waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above. They shall stand up in a heap, King James Version says, I don't know what yours says, but it stood up like the water did, except this is flowing water, right? The Red Sea was not necessarily flowing water, it was more still, and so there was a wall on each side. This time there's gonna be a wall on one side, and then it's gonna be dry from there on down as far as you can see. All right. But can you get the picture? As these people passed over, they could look to their right, and there was 12 men, 12 priests, holding the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders, and behind them was a wall of water. And they looked down this way, and it was dry. Because and it's gonna be a flood stage. He's gonna make a point of saying that, so I think that is also gonna demonstrate the fact that it was a flood stage. There was no natural crossing. You know, people say, well, this was some natural event that took place. No, it was a flood stage. So, you know, any ford that there had been where you would cross was going to be flooded. So this is going to add to the fact that it's a miracle. All
Plus
right?
it said it was dry ground, it wouldn't bleed.
Yeah. And it said that, you know, I've thought about that too. That they didn't have to bog through mud going through either the Red Sea or the Jordan. It was dry.
What verse was that in, where he said the 12 men?
Verse 12. Take 12 men out of the tribe of Israel, one tribe, one man from each
That'd
tribe.
be in the wrong chapter, wouldn't it?
Chapter 3. Chapter 3,
Oh,
verse 12.
oh.
Yeah. And it shall come to pass. Now, he's telling what's going to happen. Verse 13, it shall come to pass as soon as the soles of their feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord rest in the waters of Jordan will be cut off from the waters that come down from above. Now, where was that water coming from? Give you a little geography here. Where was it coming from? Sea of Galilee, coming down the Jordan, right? And what was below them? The Dead Sea, or the Salt Sea, all right? So, it came to pass when the people removed from their tents, verse 14, to pass over Jordan, the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant, and as they that bear the Ark came to the Jordan, the feet of the priests that bore the Ark were dipped into the brim of the water, for the Jordan overflowed all its banks, all the time of harvest. Then the waters which came down from above stood and rose up in a heap, very far from the city of Adam. Now, I don't know where the city of Adam is, all right? Beside Zaratan. And those that came down toward the sea of the plain, even the Salt Sea, failed and were cut off. The people passed over right against Jericho. The priests that bear the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan. And all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed, and I just quote, King James said, clean over the Jordan. Passed clean over the Jordan. So, the thing that they have been looking forward to, the thing they've been looking forward to for their whole life is now happening. It has to be a lot of excitement right now, doesn't it? And particularly as you see the miracle, and God performs this miracle as they enter the land to remind them one more time, don't be afraid. I'm going to do what I told you. I can handle every situation. You're not even going to have to wade through the Jordan to get over here.
Don't you know the enemies that were spying and watching them saw that river roll up? They're saying, "Oh boy."
That's exactly what it's going to say. Their heart melted when they saw and heard that the Jordan had dried up and these people had walked over.
And they saw the 40,000 troops.
Yeah. What did they know?
They didn't have a chance.
This is the end. This is it. We can't fight this. So, chapter 4, verse 1 through 9 is going to talk about setting up a memorial. And, you know, quite often in somebody the guys that do the Lord's Supper devotional talk about a memorial, and that's, the Lord on numerous occasions will have, I mean, even if you go back from the time when, Jacob was going to look for a bride and going to promised land. Then you get, Moses, who was fleeing. And the number of times that something was set up as a memorial. And it was usually a pile of rocks. Sometimes it was plastered over and something was written on it. Or sometimes it was just this heap of rocks and people come on it and they know this didn't occur naturally. What is this? Why did somebody put this here? And then they were told the story. And that's the purpose of it. So that when you do something, when you see something, then you say, what's this about? And it gives you the opportunity, it opens the door, and that's exactly why this was. And whenever your children see this and they ask, they say, what's this about? He's gonna say, well, this is here as a memorial because whenever we crossed into this land and took this land, God dried up the waters of the Jordan right here. And, you know, so it's a memorial, and a test to God's power. So they're gonna set up this, memorial stones. They're gonna take 12 stones from the place where the priest stood, and they must be pretty sizable stones because it talks about carrying those and making a memorial out of them. So, I mean, they wouldn't be pebbles.
If they're gonna be a memorial, it has to be visible after the water goes back down, so.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Billy, because he's gonna tell them to take these stones and to take them until they camp that night and set it up that night. But there is a verse right in here where it seems to say that they set it up in the middle of the Jordan. So, maybe when we get there, some of your versions have something a little bit different. But he's gonna tell them to carry those 12 stones until they camp that night, and wherever they camp, I want you to set that memorial up. And
But he said they set up another pile in the Jordan.
did it say another pile?
Yeah, verse 9, he also set up another pile of 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan.
Okay, and that's where I wanted to come. Actually, I'm not sure that it says another, but it may, okay? It would simplify this thing if it was another. Okay, King James doesn't have another. All right, so I don't know, I hadn't checked it out, see if the word's in the original Hebrew or not, but anyway, do y'all understand what we're talking about? He tells us to take those 12 stones and set it up, and he'll go on and say that that's what they did. But then you come down to verse 9, it says, Joshua set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, the place where the feet of the priests which bear the ark of the covenant and is there to this day.
Verse 20 is where you get the second set of the same stones that was in the Jordan.
The same stones?
And those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up in Gilgal.
Yeah.
It
So,
sounds like it's the same ones that they said here when they placed them all.
the ones that he told them to take, yeah, but if they set up, it says Joshua set up the 12 stone, verse 9. Of course, that doesn't mean he did it personally, but he
It
had
says
to.
they're gonna be there today.
Pardon?
Is the Jordan not very deep?
Jordan's not very deep.
Okay, it would have to be not deep if you can see them or step on them, you know.
It's, a flood stage, I don't know what it's like at flood stage, but I mean, I've been there and you could wade across it, where I was, alright. But now, as you get closer,
Well,
interestingly, as you get closer to the Sea of Galilee, it gets wider and
but
deeper.
if you were there, did you see these stones?
But, I don't know, you know, I mean, I didn't go to Jericho, so, or I might have, but I didn't go to Jordan there. So, but for some reason, I would doubt if they're still there to this day. You know, it'd be nice if they were, but I doubt
What
that.
does it mean? Cause I know there's several places in the Bible, something will happen and it'll say that they are there to this day.
Yeah, where are you reading?
That was in, 9, the end of verse 9.
The last sentence.
Okay, it means
I've noticed it,
Right.
different points during the,
So at the time that this was written down, it was still there. All right.
so,
We're not sure that's not the same stones, really.
Well, if it was, then they picked them back up until they moved.
The first place was where they lodged, where they camped out.
Well, the first place that they put the stones would have been in the Jordan probably. And then they carried them on to wherever they were going, unless he came back and did it. But, you know, some of these things, it's a little hard to figure out. But the also simplifies it if it's there, you know, that they took other stones and did it.
kinda like Sodom and Gomorrah, where's the lady, it just turned into a pillow of salt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in my version, verse 9 says, Joshua set up the stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests carried the Ark of the Covenant. It doesn't say he set up the stones right there. Mine says had been in the middle of the Jordan.
What verse is that?
That's 9.
Huh?
9,
My King James doesn't say
It's
that.
like, that's where they
That's right.
picked them up.
King James says he set up 12 stones.
It says 12 stones there the other day.
Yeah. So, you have three possibilities here. All right, we don't have to go, Rob, it doesn't matter that much. Anyway, you have one here, that the stone that had been, you had the also, which would be a different set of stones, and I don't know what third one is, but anyway. Skipping on down, all right. In verse 6, by the way, he says this, the purpose of setting this up, it may be a sign among you that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, what do these stones mean? Then you shall answer them, here's the answer, that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord when it passed over Jordan. The waters were cut off, and these stones shall be a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. All right? And it says, verse 8, children of Israel did what Joshua commanded them. They carried them over with them unto the place where they lodged and laid them down there. All right? Now, chapter 4, verse 10, beginning. Now, the ark is going to talk about the ark being brought into Canaan. For the priests which bare the ark stood in the middle of the Jordan until everything was finished. The Lord commanded Joshua to speak unto the people according to all that Moses commanded Joshua. And the people hurried and passed over. That maybe they were sympathetic toward these guys having to hold this long. I don't know. And it came to pass when all the people were passed clean over, that the ark of the Lord passed over the priests, the presence of the people. Children of Reuben, children of Gad, half tribe Manasseh, passed over armed before the children of Israel, as Moses spoke to them. Now, what's that mean? What's that about?
The ones that were laying on the other side.
On the east bank, that's right. And they had promised that they would go and they would fight until the land was conquered and wouldn't come home until it was conquered, right? So they led the way. About 40,000 prepared for war passed over before the Lord unto battle to the plains of Jericho. On that day, the Lord magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they feared Moses all the days of his life. So that's the fulfillment of what it said back in chapter 3, verse 7. The Lord spoke unto Joshua, saying, command the priests that bear the ark of testimony, come up out of Jordan. He commanded the priests, saying, come up out of Jordan. And they passed, the priests bare the ark of the covenant. They came out of the middle of the Jordan, and the soles of their feet were lifted on dry land. The waters returned to their place and flowed over all the banks. The people came up out of Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. Is that significant? If you go back to Exodus chapter 12, verse 3, guess how long it has been since they left? 40 years to the day. 40 years to the day. Is God true to his promises? That's incredible, isn't it? those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua pitched in Gilgal. He spoke unto the children of Israel, saying, when your children shall ask their children, fathers in time to come, what does this mean? You shall tell them, Israel came across the Jordan on dry land. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan before you until you were passed over, as the Lord did the Red Sea, that he dried up from before us until we were gone over. Now, verse 24, that, number one, all the people of the earth may know the hand of the Lord is mighty. And number two, that you might fear the Lord your God forever. So there were two purposes for that. One purpose was for them, another one was for us. And that's still true when we learn about what God does. There's a lesson for them and there's a lesson for us. All right? Now, chapter 5 through chapter 10, verse 15 is going to be the central campaign. They're going to come into the land and they're going to capture the cities in the middle of the country. And then they're going to turn to, let me look, I want to say south. Yeah, they go to the south, you conquer the southern cities, and then they'll go to the north and conquer the northern cities. All right? Anybody got a comment? We want to start? Let's read this because we just talked about it. It came to pass, verse 1 of chapter 5, when all the kings of the Amorites, which are on the side of the Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites, which are by the sea, heard the Lord dried up the waters of the Jordan before the children of Israel, until we were passed over, that their heart melted. Neither was there a spirit in them anymore because of the children of Israel. And so you can imagine if you were those people, and here comes this army, and they've been camped out there, and you know that you already have one of the most powerful kings who called somebody to try to curse them and stop this, and that didn't work. And now, you know, you've got spies that are spying on everything that happened, and they come running back and they start talking about how the Jordan River was cut off and all those people passed through on dry land. You might better be packing your bags and finding somewhere else to go, right? So, at that time the Lord said to Joshua, I want you to circumcise all the males that were born during the 40 years in the wilderness. Because all of those that had passed over from Egypt had been circumcised. But now, during this time, 40 years of wandering, you neglected to circumcise them, so I want all the males circumcised. 40 years old and down.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. In more ways than one. That's a lot. All right. Skip down to verse 7. Their children whom we raised up in their stead, talking about the ones who were born during the 40 years. Joshua circumcised, for they were uncircumcised, because they had not circumcised them by the way. And it came to pass when they had done circumcision, can you think, why did they, I mean, if they made such a big deal of them being circumcised before they all came out, why did they keep that up? I'm saying they must not have felt a very close relationship with God during that time. You know, I mean, they were being penalized. So here they were wandering in the desert. They didn't take care of Israel. The Lord said unto Joshua, this day have I rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off of you. Wherefore the name of the place is called Gilgal. The word Gilgal means to roll away. So, what was the reproach of Egypt? I've rolled the reproach of Egypt away from you today. By the way, we've got two sweet girls with us today that sure are being good. The best I can come up with is the people no longer and say, you know, you say you got this God, I don't see much he's doing for you. Well, that day's gone, all right? Nobody's gonna be saying that anymore, are they? Not for a long time, anyway. And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal and kept Passover on the 14th day of the month, even on the plains of Jericho. And they ate the corn, the old corn of the land on the day after the Passover, unleavened cakes, parched corn, and the self-same day. Now, if you've been eating manna, if you've been eating steak for a long, long time, then beans taste fine. Have you ever heard that song? Anyway, if you've been eating manna for 40 years, I don't care what it is they put on your plate other than manna, it's gonna be good, right? Even if it is year-old parched corn, all right, it's gonna taste good. So they got some different food, and by the way, they probably had some food before then because they conquered 2 nations already on the east side, so surely they got some food other than. But the manna ceased on the very day that they crossed over. So he's going to say, and the manna, verse 12. Verse 12, and the manna ceased on the day after they had eaten the old corn in the land. Neither had the children of Israel manna anymore. I bet they said,
Thank goodness.
yeah, good riddance. But they did not eat, they did eat the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. And it came to pass when Joshua was in Jericho that he lifted up his eyes, or some verses say by Jericho, lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man. Here's an incident thrown in here that's a real mystery, right? There stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hand. Joshua went over to him and said, are you one of us? Or are you one of them? And he said what?
Neither.
Neither. Interesting answer, right? He said, but as the captain of the host of the Lord have I come. This is quite an incident here, folks. This is a little spooky. Right? And Joshua fell on his face and he worshiped. And he said to him, what does my Lord say to his servant? The captain of the Lord's host said to Joshua, take your shoe off, for the place where you're standing is holy. Now, has somebody heard that before?
Oh, yeah.
Moses heard that, didn't he? At the burning bush. And so, that's all we know, folks. That's it.
Was this a vision or was it an actual person?
I don't know, he said he saw a person. I don't know. He was real, whether it was a vision or not. He was real. He was there. And whether he was physical or whether he wasn't, I don't know. But that's all we know.
And where was it?
And it's really interesting is just whenever he crossed over by Jericho.
Kind of like Melchizedek.
Yeah. And so you have a miraculous manifestation. I don't know what this accomplished. He had said, hey, I'm on your side. I would understand that, okay? But he said neither. So I take that to mean I'm going to be on the correct side regardless of what happens. I'm going to be doing the right thing.
Don't think it was an angel, because before when angels appeared, they fall down and worship, and they said, don't worship.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
who was the commander of the Lord's army?
So what's the Lord's army made of angels?
Well, God said on the mountain, he said, I will send my angel before you to carry you into the promised land.
Yeah.
Who is God's angel in this case?
Well,
This
I mean,
wasn't.
we can speculate about it that it was a pre-incarnate form of Jesus, is what many people believe. I tend to think that that very well may be true. I'm not gonna stake my salvation on it, all right? But it's okay that we don't know all the answers to all this. But, whatever that's the best I can get out of it. All right, any comment, question, criticism, or observation that you'd like to make?
I like, you know, the Manor Park, and look over that a little bit, but that had to be, you think how many people he fed, man, all those years, and a lot of people.
A lot of people. Had to come up with a lot of water too, didn't it?
Did he drop it every day, or I wonder how that came? I mean,
Evidently, every morning they had to go out and get it. Give us this day our